Mock peer review session. Disclaimer: applications that the panelists will evaluate are not real. Panelists are actors and science is made up.
Okay, so this is what we're talking about. That's the framework. And now we are going to have a bunch of the folks from NIH offer to show you what a study section would look like. Now this is a mock section. So the applications are smashed together from a variety of them. We will have the people representing the SRO, the chair, the reviewers. These are folks that work at NIH. They have sat through multiple review sessions. So we're pulling bits and pieces over what's going on. So we have a question on timing. Okay, usually I'll answer that one really quickly. When we get the applications in, like I said, we have 4 to 6 weeks to provide those to the reviewers and for them to give us information back. Once the study section is held, CSR is required to have the critiques released to program and to the applicants 30 days after the meeting. So that's the deadline at the end. Frequently we get them out sooner, but we have 30 days. For scores, we try and get those out 2 to 3 days after the review meeting. So that's working days as well. So you should know 2 to 3 days after the meeting what your score is, and then within 30 days you should get a notification from Commons that your summary statement is ready for viewing. Okay, shall we bring everyone back?
Yes, please. Thank you. And I just wanted to, while we get ready to transition into the mock peer review, we see a nice steady flow of questions. Feel free to please send your questions in. We are tracking all of them and will respond to them during the Q&A. Please also fill out that feedback form as well as connect with us on LinkedIn. Take care, and I hope you enjoy the show.
Roles, photos and character names. Reviewers: Kurt Alec, H. Equity, Tanya Stark, Carmen Sandiego, Julia Ogden. SRO: Peter Marshall. Chair: Dana Scully. Program Officer: Grant Love.
So each reviewer is going to introduce themselves and their roles. So Kurt Alec, can we start with you? While Kurt works on his audio, Tanya, do you want to begin?
Stephanie Fertig.
Thanks. So I think how we're going to do this is, and this is similar to something we've done previously. So how are we going to do this? I'm going to turn this over to our SRO and our chair for this study section. And as noted in the disclaimer, while we do like to have fun with this, the hope is that this is a great learning exercise on how a review is structured and how things operate. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the chair and the SRO, and you guys can get us started and kick us off.
Alan Rashan.
Okay, let's start. Generally what will happen is that we'll all get together with our coffee in the seminar room. We've been doing it by Zoom for the last several months, so it's still the same type of organization. And what will happen is that the SRO will start the meeting, and we will do it as follows. This meeting is closed to the general public in accordance with provisions of the Federal Advisory Committee Act, or FACA. Only those reviewers and NIH staff having relevant official business will be present. Now, we each have a role to play in the review of these applications. I'm the designated federal official for this meeting and will monitor the process to make sure that each application receives an objective and fair initial peer review and that all of our applicable laws, rules, regulations, and policies are followed. And in order for me to fulfill this role, all of the business for this meeting must be conducted in my presence. So when we have hotel meetings, that means you don't get to talk about the applications you just reviewed outside the room. Any comments have to be done in my presence. Now, the chair is going to guide the scientific discussion for this review, and they will let you know what they expect. You, as reviewers, are serving as ad hoc advisors to the federal government, and we really appreciate your service. Now, please be aware that you have agreed to serve under the rules and regulations set forth in FACA. So One of the cornerstones of our review process is confidentiality. Everything that we discuss, all of the paperwork, all the materials, all the conversations, all the deliberations and assignments related to this meeting are confidential. They must be kept confidential, and therefore, if anyone asks you about this meeting, and that's applicants, that's your colleagues, that's other individuals, any questions, please tell them that you're not at liberty to discuss it, and then refer it to me and refer them to me. We will handle any questions and comments. We take this very seriously. Consequences for breaches in confidentiality and review integrity may include removing reviewers from study sections, barring reviewers from receiving federal funding, and in some cases referring the case to investigation and possible legal prosecution. So this is serious. Please take it so. Conflict of interest. We have sent several emails to you defining what a conflict of interest is. You've signed off on several forms stating that at that stage of the review you have seen no conflicts. We will take care of anything that pop up during the meeting with the post-meeting review conflict form. So if during the discussion you hear something and you go, oh, I know him, and oh, I think I shouldn't be here, let me know, let the ESA that's working in the meeting know, and we'll put you in conflict and remove you from the discussion. And finally, scientific misconduct. If during the discussion you feel that there has been a fabrication, falsification, or plagiarism in the work that's being proposed, please let me know. Do not talk about it to the panel, because after all, an accusation is not a proven thing until it's gone through the entire process. We will go ahead and review the application. We will refer the issue to the Office of Research Integrity, and they will investigate it. So it will be out of our hands. So, and with that, I will turn it over to our chair and take on my SRO role.
Kathy Cooper.
Thank you, Dr. Marshall. So what we do at this point in time, hopefully I have started my video, is I, as the chair, will lead a introduction that goes around the table. Since we don't have a table, I'll introduce myself, and then I will call on the other reviewers to introduce themselves, and basically they'll just say a little bit about what their background is and why they're there. After we do that and introduce any observers in the room, then we will start discussion of the application. So first, I am the chairperson. I am Dr. Dana Scully. I am the Chief Scientific Officer of Microimplants, LLC. We design and manufacture custom microimplants for domestic customers, international customers, and beyond. Okay, so our next person is Dr. Kurt Alec. Would you introduce yourself?
Todd Hyam.
Hello, this is Dr. Kurt Alec. I am a double endowed professor at 3 esteemed research institutions, and thus I have a lot of expertise to impart on everything relating to this review panel. So any questions you have, I will be able to answer them and can tell you which applications are good.
Thank you, Dr. Alec. Our next reviewer is Mr. H. Equity.
Derek Tubor.
Mr. Equity, would you like to introduce yourself?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is H. Equity, and I am the owner of a small company called eTech Interplanetary Health. It's my pleasure to be here. I have several grants from NIMHD as well as other institutes dealing with SBIR and STTR. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Equity. The next reviewer would be Dr. Julia Ogden.
Zane Martin.
Hello, my name is Dr. Julia Ogden. I'm an accomplished pathologist at the Toronto Mercy Hospital. I also do some collaborative work with my husband, the famous Detective Murdoch, on some inventions that are very mysterious and for proprietary reasons I will not discuss.
Well, thank you, Dr. Ogden. Our next reviewer is Dr. Carmen Sandiego.
Lily Portilla.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Carmen Sandiego. I am professor at Acme University of the Sciences.
Okay. And last but not least is Dr. Tanya Stark.
Stephanie Furtick.
Hi, my name is Dr. Tanya Stark. I'm the CEO and president of Stark Industries, LLC. We had, the company used to work predominantly in the defense industry, but has now moved more towards healthcare and healthcare robotics. And so I'll be able to talk a lot about the robotics and different new technologies and innovative technologies in the healthcare system. I have to ask Carmen Sandiego, where are you?
I am in Croatia today. I'm in Dubrovnik.
Very nice. All right. Then once we've introduced the reviewers, we also go around the room and introduce any observers who are present at the meeting. It's very common for our observers to be program officers who have an interest in applications that are going to be reviewed at that meeting, and they are strictly observers. They listen and they learn. I believe we have one program officer today, Dr. Love.
Lyndon Joseph.
Good afternoon to everyone. My name is Dr. Grant Love, and I'm a program officer at the Technology Institute at the National Institute of Health. And my portfolio includes small business grants, either through small business or through university. That's the technology grants. Thank you.
Fantastic. All right. Well, we're ready to get started with our discussions. Our first application is going to be a new phase 1 SBIR application, also as a clinical trial. Before we start, we're going to collect some preliminary scores from the 3 assigned reviewers. So our 3 assigned reviewers are Mr. Equity, Mr. Alec, Dr. Alec, and Dr. Ogden. So Mr. Equity, can you give me your preliminary score, please?
A 4.
A 4, okay. Dr. Alec, what is your preliminary score?
7.
Ooh, okay, 7. And Dr. Ogden, what is your preliminary score?
A 4.
A 4, okay, fine. All right, so to get started, Dr. Equity, Mr. Equity, you can go first. What we'd like you to do is just very briefly describe the application, what's it about, and then please let us know what are the score driving points that led to your score, including things like scientific rigor, the milestones, and the commercialization potential, since this is a phase 1. Please go ahead, Mr. Equity.
Thank you. People get me mixed up all the time with those doctors, and especially those that have double endowed professorships. But I don't have one of those degrees. I'm just a businessman, and I like to start companies and make them successful. So Mr. is my preferred title. Thank you. This first time submission, which I like very much, is from a small company in South Carolina, and it proposes a novel telehealth computer tablet assisted intervention called Partners at Meals. If successful, this ambitious cluster randomized trial intervention will result in the following. The primary outcome is a demonstrated improvement in nutritional status and dysfunctional behaviors and quality of life for participants with dementia. The secondary outcomes, but they're really too many to mention, let me just go to the score drivers for this. My score drivers: great team of interventionists and researchers with experience in the care of individuals with dementia and in designing effective interventions. Conceptually, I love the multi-level perspective. They make a strong case for the need for this product, supported by a strong literature review and logical and scientifically compelling narratives. One important aspect of this intervention is that the meals will be consumed at either enhanced usual care sites or the participant's home. This is a novel aspect. Feeding individuals at their home, especially for individuals with dementia, will minimize their upsetness in terms of traveling to a new place. Let me now share my concerns that drove my score towards not so good the higher levels. This team has little experience in developing marketable technologies. They have great ambition. In fact, it is too much, as reflected in the long list of secondary outcomes. Consequently, some of the components are underdeveloped and include a lack of details regarding the trial design, participant dyads and population attributes, site selection including inclusion and exclusion criteria, racial and ethnic and SES population attributes, and the use of the computer tablets and details around the train-the-trainer components. I'll stop here now to give my esteemed colleagues a chance to respond.
All right, well, thank you, Mr. Equity. Our second reviewer had slightly different opinion. That would be Dr. Alec. Why don't you tell us what you think about this application, focusing more on a brief concurrence with the primary reviewer, but also letting us know additional points or points where you have a difference of opinion.
Sure. So Mr. Equity did a great job of talking about the strengths of the application, or at least some of them are strengths, in terms of a strong team and great goals. I think where I differed on this application is how likely and, how much do we believe that they're actually going to be able to achieve such goals. So, getting a little bit more specific there. The first thing I noticed is, they say that they're going to demonstrate all these improvements. I did not see any preliminary data that suggests that they will.
Pardon me, Dr. Alec, it's the phase 1. They don't require preliminary data. They can make their case in another way.
Well, I didn't see enough of a likelihood of, and many of these other applications have preliminary data that tells me it's likely to succeed.
No, really, they can make their case based on a thorough literature review or other factors. It does not have to be preliminary data.
Okay.
And let me jump in here too.
Yes,
also,
thank you.
Try not to compare applications. We want to look at each application as a standalone entity.
Thank you.
Excellent point, Dr. Marshall.
Okay. Well, that'll be said. Let's jump to the next issue here. So they talk about how they're going to have these 2 trials with 60 patients each. It's unclear if that's enough for statistical power, and is this a really powered study, and it's all going to be in one state, and how much can you extrapolate that? Because, I assume they're going to develop this for more than one state. So that was a concern. And then they also talk about, as Mr. Equity said, that they are going to demonstrate improvement in nutritional status and dysfunctional behaviors. But how are they assaying that? What experiments are they actually doing to demonstrate such improvement? I did not see that in the application, and that is critical. I'll stop there, and I can bring up more weaknesses if the other reviewers would like.
Well, why don't we let our third reviewer, Dr. Julia Ogden, weigh in. Again, just, talking briefly about how you agree, but also bringing out any points where you disagree.
Okay, sure. So overall, I pretty much agree with my esteemed colleagues on both the negative and the positive critiques. I would like to add, though, the biggest critique that hasn't been mentioned yet is the difficulty I had, at least, in reading the application. There was poor grantsmanship because of this difficulty to read. The figures were very small font. The labels were difficult to read, and it looked like even they were mislabeled in some of the figures. So that was why my score was a 4, but I could even go even worse because of this poor grantsmanship.
Okay, all right. So we have some additional things to talk about since this is a clinical trial. What about their study timelines? Any of our assigned reviewers want to weigh in on that?
I didn't have any problems with their study timelines. I thought they were reasonable. I think they may have some challenges facing them in terms of actually being able to get into people's houses. you know, unfortunately, we're in the midst of COVID-19, and so getting into people's houses isn't so easy. And it also comes with its own threat to the health of the people that will be actually going in to provide the respite care. So I think that's my only
okay.
concern.
I think our chair is going to address this point.
Mr.
Dr.
Equity,
Marshall? Yeah.
one of the things that we recently released guidance on was the impact of COVID on research. And it was stated that when reviewing applications or when submitting, assume that the impact of COVID will be taken care of before the application is actually executed. So if that has affected your score, you need to rethink it.
Or at least rethink
Thank
that
you.
part of
I
it.
just love NIH for being concerned about that. And it's not going to be a problem. I'll easily revise my score to take that consideration out. Thank you.
Okay, great. I have one more question before we open the discussion. Obviously, this is a clinical trial. What about human subjects protection and inclusion of women, minorities, and individuals across the lifespan? How is that addressed in this application? Any assigned
I can
reviewer?
speak to that as well.
Okay, surely.
One of the issues that I did note in terms of my poor score driving points was that they did not pay much attention to addressing and providing details around the populations that will be included. This includes not only race, ethnicity, but also SES. They'll be working both in rural populations as well as in rural areas as well as in urban areas. And I thought more attention to detail in terms of the differences they might expect and how it might influence their protocols was warranted.
Okay, understood.
I can add in that, you know, I thought the populations, I mean, as Mr. Equity said, there may be some things missing there, but if you then just look at the overall population, it wasn't clear to me that we're actually going to know that this definitely works, and this is an SBIR. Should we not know that at the end of the study?
So you're saying that the number of participants is too low?
Well, I mean, what are we supposed to know at the end of an SBIR? Are we supposed to know for sure that it works, or is it just supposed to be, you know, proof of concept?
Well, this is a phase 1. It is a phase 1. They don't have to take it to the market at the end of the phase 1. It can be proof of concept.
Okay, so even if they don't have statistical power and it's just, you know, showing that there's a trend and that this could lay the stage for future studies, that is the expectation for phase 1?
It could be.
Okay, that helps.
Okay, fantastic.
That's the expectation I had out of this one.
Okay, good to know, Mr. Equity.
Thank you.
Okay, we can open the discussion to the unassigned panelists. Would anyone like to contribute some thoughts or ask some questions?
Question. Is now when we talk about the budget, I had some budgetary concerns.
Not yet. We talk about the science first, then score, and then we talk about non-scored issues like the budget. We'll get to that in a minute.
Well, what about, I did have some questions around the time that the PI is going to be spending on this project. I noticed they just don't have a lot of, you know, their level of effort here is very low. Is that something we can talk about now?
No, let's talk about that when we get to the budget.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Any other scientific parts of the discussion? Okay. Well, then let me try to briefly summarize where I think we are before we offer some suggested final scores. There were some definite strengths to this project. It was a great team. They have experience. They have a novel idea of how to deliver these meals at home. These were balanced to some extent by some concerns about the fact that the plan was a little bit sketchy in terms of its detail, perhaps even overly ambitious. There was some concerns initially about statistical power, but at the end, I believe you agreed that they had enough participants in the study to make a phase 1 equivalent initial proof of concept. Does that Does that capture the science? Great. All righty. So then why don't we revisit the scores? What score would you suggest as a final overall preliminary, overall score, Mr. Equity?
Based on some of the comments my colleagues made, I'm going to move from 4 to 5.
Okay, a score of 5. Then we have Dr. Alec. Where are you?
Yeah, so, in deference to some of my colleagues, even though, yes, one of them does not have a advanced degree,
which is not necessary.
Okay, well, anyway.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Anyway, I will come to a 6 for my 7.
You're a 6. Okay, and then finally, Dr. Ogden, what score do you recommend?
Well, after this very fruitful discussion, I think I will also change my score to a 6.
To a 6. All right, so we have a preliminary score, a final score suggested range from 5 to 6. Does anyone plan to vote outside that range? Okay, great. Then mark your score sheets electronically, and then we'll go on to the next part of the discussion. So at this point in time, we can talk about the budget. Would somebody like to tell me what you think of the budget?
Yeah, I mean, I had a concern about the budget that I had mentioned earlier. I have some concerns that really that about the amount of time that the PI, and the percentage and level of effort the PI is going to be spending on the grant. I thought it was very low. And I also noticed that the overall budget is over the small business, the budgetary, caps that are for SBIRs and STTRs. I mean, it just seemed like it was over what you're allowed to ask for.
Well, that would be a programmatic issue after the review is done. So
okay.
Well, actually, could I ask a question about that?
Okay.
Aren't they allowed to exceed the statutory caps if they are addressing a waiver or one of the waiver topics?
Right. It is entirely up to program whether they can exceed the cap, which is why we don't make this a review issue.
Is that
making their decision?
Is that the guy making all the faces? Can he tell us, what he thinks? He's the program person, right?
Well,
but wait just a minute. Wait just a minute, please. They included in their application a justification for meeting the budget cap and then for exceeding it based on the fact that there was a waiver. It fell under one of the waiver topics. And they really laid this out very clearly. So
and that will be very helpful to program staff when they're looking at the summary statement and making decisions about funding. Okay, fantastic. I think we are done. Dr. Marshall, did I leave anything out?
No, you covered it. Perfect.
Then we're ready to move on to the next application. So this application is a phase 2 and a resubmission. It is a application. We have 3 assigned reviewers. The primary reviewer is Tanya Stark. The secondary is Carmen Sandiego. And the third reviewer is Julia Ogden. So starting with Dr. Stark, can you give me your preliminary score?
2.
All right. And Dr. Sandiego?
A 6.
A 6. Okay. And then finally, Dr. Ogden, what is your preliminary enthusiasm?
A 1.
A 1. Oh, we've got some interesting spread here. Well then, Dr. Stark, why don't you tell me what's so great about this application?
Great. So this is a phase 2 resubmission from ArtDec to continue development of their new Hill Stream system. So as you all know, medical errors can cause significant harm to residents of long-term care facilities, and a use of unit dose medications takes staff time and have high error rates. In addition, there are costs associated with waste when prescriptions change or patients leave the facilities. So while Medicare and Medicaid are requiring shorter cycles to reduce waste, this also has the unfortunate consequence of potentially increasing staff time and potential errors. So the PillStream system will incorporate the TileJet robot to provide high accuracy, high throughput production of custom multi-medication packages. And the hope is that this will allow central fill pharmacies to provide long-term care facilities with short cycle dispensing at reduced cost and allow them to return the unused medications because they have a closed loop capability. So this is a resubmission. In the phase 1 of a phase 2. So in the phase 1, they created this prototype. It exceeded their primary success criterion with regards to accuracy, as well as exceeding the target fill rate by 50%. And in this phase 2, they're proposing to build and test a larger, fully functional PillStream prototype that is able to dispense directly from wholesale medication bottles. They're going to modify the onboard software to enable integration with the pharmacy management software that already exists. And then they're going to do a beta test in up to 2 central fill pharmacies. So I really think that this group addressed the reviewer concerns. I reviewed it previously, and I think they really did address those concerns, and that includes the modification, that second aim, adding that second aim in about modification of the software for better integration with the pharmacy management software. That was a concern that we had, so I really like that. I think they met the milestones. They well met the milestones and exceeded them from the phase 1. And they really have a solid approach and kind of clear success criteria and clear rigor. I really think it's a solid proposal now. I still wish that they did more than 2 pharmacies in their beta test, but I recognize that that's, within the boundaries of this phase 2 and within what they're going to do. That I think it's reasonable. I can want more, but I understand that this is what they're able to do, and they kind of explained that really well, I thought, in their response. They gave a really solid response to review, and so that's why I have it as a 2.
Dr. Stark, can I jump in here for just a minute to point out that it really is a breach of your own confidentiality to say that you reviewed the previous application. So going forward, let's not get into that. So these are new dogs. They came in new, and we're all fresh.
Good point, Dr. Marshall. Good point. Okay, why don't we go on to our second reviewer, who is Dr. San Diego. Where are you, Dr. San Diego?
Oh, I'm in Monument Valley now. So,
okay.
Yeah. Well, I have looked at the application, reviewed it carefully, and I guess my score is based on a couple of important things that I noted in the application. One was that the commercial development plan to me was overly optimistic. The market size and some of the other data that they included, just showed some overwhelming optimism on the part of the applicant. I'm going to also I was a bit concerned about a national caregivers meeting that was that happened about 5 months ago, where they failed to note in their application some other technologies that actually may impact what they are doing in the application. So that was a national meeting that was open to all, and papers and abstracts that were available to the public to view prior to the meeting, that seemed to have they've missed that very important data that could have, I believe, impacted some of the information that they included in the application. And I'll add that my very dear professor friend, Professor Malmstrom, has working on something that's really similar to this.
Hang on a second, Dr. San Diego. Is this public information or private information?
No, it's
public information.
I agree. The national meeting public, but the conversation with my friend Professor Malmstrom is not public. So
why don't we set that aside for
okay,
now?
all right. Sorry about that.
No problem.
So those are the reasons why I have given this application the score that I did.
Okay. Then we have, last but not least, Dr. Ogden.
Well, I'm going to have to disagree with the negative critiques. I was very excited about this application. I think they more than adequately address the concerns in the resubmission. I think that the way their approach was scientifically rigorous, and I think that this should be funded.
Oh, well, we don't make funding decisions. We can recommend it based on the science, but funding decisions are the purview of program.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Anything else, Dr. Ogden?
That's it. I was very excited about this application.
Okay. And I do believe there could be a clinical trial in this, a small one, a beta trial. Is that correct?
There is, yep.
And did they articulate their study timelines adequately for the trial?
Yeah, I thought the approach was really well done. I think they really addressed all of the, clinical trials issues.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then human subjects protections and also inclusion, women, minorities.
Yep.
And
Really solid. Well,
all of that's solid. Okay. And
well described. They followed the instructions.
Good for them. Glad to hear that. Okay. Well, then before we conclude the discussion, why don't we open the discussion to the floor? Would any of the other reviewers like to contribute at this point?
I just want to, comment on Carmen's, Dr. San Diego's comments about, I agree about the public meeting, and that maybe is something to consider. Although obviously that happened after this application, but I think even with that information, and I also happen to look at that information since it is public information. I felt that this is still extremely relevant, and I just beg to disagree there. I really do think this is still a solid proposal and really, has good significance and is a positive one. I factored that in, and that's why it's a 2 and not, an outstanding 1. But I still think there's, it's a solid effort here.
Okay. Any other comments before I try to summarize the discussion? Okay.
Wait just a minute.
Yes.
Is
Mr. Equity.
solid good enough for a score of a 2? I mean, isn't a 2 supposed to be much better than solid?
Well, for me, I mean, that is as good as you're going to get for me. I tend to 2 is.
You can use the whole range, Dr. Stark. From 1.
Yeah, but I hate to do that, and I'm generally very negative about everything. So the fact that I've gotten to the point where I think it's a 2. I mean, that's for those who have reviewed with me before. This is pretty much as good as it gets.
Okay. Any other discussion?
H Equity here.
Yes, Mr. Equity.
I like this application.
Okay, excellent.
And the strength of its phase 1 prototype. I thought they did a really good job.
Mm-hmm.
My only concern is that the beta test is limited to 2 central fill pharmacies. I think Dr. Stark mentioned this.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that they will not be able to test the robustness of their software regarding its integration with pharmacy management software. Did they discuss whether the 2 beta testers would utilize the same software systems or compatible software systems?
They did actually, and that was one of the, so that is, I completely agree with your thoughts there. They did address that. They are using different software systems, so they're really trying to test it out in as kind of these different environments. Recognizing again, there's only 2 of them, so I think they picked the best 2 I thought they could, given the limitations in, again, you can only do so much in this phase 2, and the point of this is really to get to some kind of inflection point, either a partner or an investor. So I mean, it's not supposed to take it all the way.
I will say that one positive I found here is that in the commercialization plan, they talk about that even though they may have limited experience bringing products to market, they talk about the board of advisors, the scientific advisory board, and these consultants and COOs that they're bringing in, CMOs, they really do have a lot of expertise in bringing products to market. So, even though maybe these 2 have not done it over and over again, they are bringing in people that can do that for them. Who knows? Maybe they'll even bring in Mr. Equity. Maybe he could do something here.
I'm sorry, but I wasn't even finished with my comments.
Oh.
So
Mr.
if
Equity,
you will
please.
allow me to kind of get back to where I was. So I was asking some questions about their software systems. Now I want to just pivot a little bit. Did they discuss the range of accuracy that they were expecting between these two central fill pharmacies? I mean, in terms of 0.00x%?
Yes,
did
they
mention
did.
that at all?
Yes, they did. They did it. They're looking for 99.99%.
But how about the range? I mean, do they expect both of them just to hit it at 99.99?
They don't. I mean, they are being reasonable, and they did discuss. I'm kind of scrolling through the application here, but I remember that they did kind of talk about there was a range within several fractions of a percentage point that they anticipated. And again, I do think it's reasonable. I mean, and they did talk about a throughput that was about 100 blisters per minute. I mean, I think, again, what they kind of provided as their goals seemed reasonable to me, given the situation at hand.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I'll now turn the floor back over to our esteemed professor.
Okay. Any other comments, or shall I try to summarize this discussion? Okay, I'll give it a shot. It looks like the phase 1 was very successful. They met their milestones. They have a logical plan for next step in this phase 2. It is a resubmission. They did a good job of addressing the concerns of the previous reviewers and even exceeding expectations. Generally, it looks like this is a really great idea with market potential. There was some concern that the commercialization plan was overly optimistic about this. However, it looks like they have a very solid group of advisors with commercialization expertise in place to guide them through this process. It looks like the human subjects in clinical trials are adequately taken care of, no problem there. Did I miss anything? Okie dokie. Well, then why don't we go back to our assigned reviewers and see what you recommend as a final score. So, Dr. Stark, what are you thinking now?
I'm staying at a 2.
Okay, that's a tough love 2 from you then, I guess, huh? Okay, Dr. San Diego, what is your thought now for a final score?
Well, after listening to my colleagues and taking into consideration that even though the commercial development plan, in my opinion, was not stellar in terms of how they had worked out their market size and everything, they do have a good board of scientific directors involved, and I do feel like that's going to help the company. And also understanding that I cannot include knowing information that is not public. I'm going to my score will go from a 6 to a 4.
To a 4. Okay. And then finally, Dr. Ogden, where do you land on a suggested final score?
I am sticking to an enthusiastic 1.
Okie doke. So that makes us have a relatively robust range of scores from 1 to 4. Does anyone plan to vote outside that range?
Yeah, I'm thinking about voting a 5.
Really? Well, refresh my memory. Why is that? What is your 5 for?
Well, I'm a little concerned about them only using these 2 pharmacies.
Ah, the 2 pharmacies.
And that's a concern for me.
Okay.
Now, do I have to explain why I'm going outside the range?
Well, you do, and frankly, you did mention it during the discussion, and if I had recalled that, I would not have made you explain again, but I did it, so thank you very much for explaining. Okie doke.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so everyone, mark your score sheet, and then we'll talk about non-scorable issues, such as the budget. Would somebody like to tell me what you think of the budget?
I thought the budget was reasonable. Yeah,
I agree. I agree.
Okay. So any problems with things like resource sharing or authentication? Is that okay?
No.
Okay. Okay, well then that concludes the discussion of the second application. So since we only have 2 applications in this meeting, I'll turn it back over to you, Dr. Marshall.
All right. Thank you very much. Great job, everyone. I think you've hit all of the topics. And I noticed that a couple of people had COIs that were taken care of. So if you have any issues with the discussions that we've had, please note them on your post-meeting forms, e-sign that. You have 3 days to update any of the critiques that you have made changes to. So please, please, if you've changed your score, the critiques should reflect your new score, not what was there now. Please update those. It gets to be problematic trying to explain scores that are way out of line with the comments that are made. So please take care of those. And with that, we will close the meeting.
Okay, great. So we're done. Thank you very much.